simply relying on Twitter headlines, as you said, do not have the wonders of a wiki education, come and elaborate on your positions. Why are you running away from boldly and bravely defending your positions in the marketplace of ideas?
The Daily Show. I am your host, Jon Stewart. This is number 3. The third episode. This is my third episode. The first 2, very controversial. A lot of discourse around it. A lot of carping back and forth. A lot of anger. A lot of commentary. Tonight, I'm done with it. Tonight is perhaps an amuse-bouche, a trifle. Something light. Tonight, we discuss Israel-Palestine. Are we? Who wrote this? Well, I legally have to read what's in the prompter, so here we go. We're going to take a look in our new and probably never-ending segment. Yes! Somehow the audience knew, but tonight we discuss Israel-Palestine.
Any discussion of Israel-Palestine is not meant to endorse or justify all the actions of either side. Mentions of Hamas that fail to condemn Hamas do not mean we don't condemn Hamas. Do not listen to this segment if you're predisposed to anti-Semitism or Islamophobia. Common side effects of discussing the Middle East are depression, anxiety, infections of the perineum, and craving hummus.
Already fucking, like, ugh. Anyway, both sizing a little bit, but whatever.
Well, folks, this is an awful situation. We're coming off on 5 months of a brutal bombing campaign brought on by a horrific massacre and hostage-taking, and we seem no closer to ending anything but the reigns of a couple of Ivy League presidents. Well, this weekend, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu finally laid out his plan for peace.
Benjamin Netanyahu is calling for complete demilitarization of Gaza, as well as Israel taking over security and controlling entry and exit points to Gaza.
So your peace plan is a siege, a military siege. You really think a military solution ends this cycle?
Victory is within reach, and you can't have victory until you eliminate Hamas.
But, okay. But your plan to eliminate Hamas by destroying all of Gaza, doesn't that just make more Hamases? Is that the plural of Hamas? Hamasai? I mean, it's an idea. Palestinian liberation is an idea. Unless you have a bomb that kills...
Why suddenly everyone pro-Palestine, though, really? What do you think? 30,000 fucking Palestinians murdered by Israel in very public fashion in broad daylight, being constantly fucking uploaded to TikTok, Instagram. I mean, there's a genocide going on, and the people doing that genocide are very proudly conducting their genocidal actions and not even trying to whitewash the genocide at this point, given the almost a century of unconditional support they've received from the Western world. The genocide is happening with our weapons, with our taxpayer-funded weapons, as a matter of fact. So I think that is probably the reason, I would suspect. I mean, you're also in the community of a person who has been covering this for years and not recently because it's trendy. I've been, talking about Palestine for a decade at this point.
Ideas. Do you have a bomb that kills ideas? I mean, how long would it even take to bomb the shit out of an idea?
The intense phase of the fighting is weeks away from completion. Not months, weeks away from completion.
Oh, dear God. If you insist on this plan, if you think that ends Hamas, I believe we in the United States have a banner you can use. It's a little wind damaged, but equally delusional. Look, the United States is Israel's closest ally, Israel's big brother in the fraternity of nations, Israel's work emergency contact. Maybe it's time for the U.S. to give Israel some tough moral love.
This is shameful. There has to be accountability for these war crimes.
No targeting civilians in war.
Stop the war crimes and the atrocities and end the war today. It could happen right now.
Right now! Thank you! These atrocities must be... Sorry, I'm being told the administration was talking about Russia bombing Ukraine. I apologize. Also a war crime. But I'm sure they're giving equally stern advice to Israel.
The Biden administration...
Okay, this is not as bad as I thought it was so far. I mean, this is everything I've said in more humorous moments, talking about America's participation in genocide. I don't know why you guys were being that aggro. Started off in a weird place, but let's see.
Is urging Israel to be much more careful, to be more cautious.
How Israel does this matters.
Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians.
We want to see the government of Israel take steps to minimize civilian harm.
Be more surgical and more precise.
Be more careful.
Hey, Israel! Take it to the nuts. Could you please be more careful with your bombing? It's good advice. But really, couldn't the United States have told Israel that when we gave them all the bombs? There are bombs. This is like your Coke dealer coming in with an 8-ball and going, don't stay up all night. Don't. Sleep is very important. You got to sleep. You don't want to. And breakfast is an important part of the day. So, look, the Israeli position doesn't seem so tenable. Perhaps I can find some diplomatic leeway in the Hamas position.
Israel is a country that has no place on our land. We must remove that country.
Oh, God. Oh, brother. Okay. Fucking hell, dude. Yeah. Yeah, well, he said this. So, obviously, pointing to this, as opposed to the actual negotiating parties, Hamas representatives, the actual negotiating parties and what they've communicated, all of that is bullshit. This is very instructive, in my opinion, that this is the only thing that you can fucking point to with respect to, like, Hamas being bloodthirsty and violent, which, you know, this dude is, right? And even then, it's a demonstration of, like, him saying, we have the moral right to do as many October 7s as we want because Israel is an apartheid state. Okay? This is the one singular instance you can point to. The one singular instance that you can point to, as opposed to literally fucking, like, full tilt support from the Western world for all of the genocidal statements from the Israeli government. It is very instructive, in my opinion, that this is the only thing you can go back to and not a shit ton of cessation of hostility agreements that have been brought forward in the past, 5 months now of this conflict, of this genocide.
Does that mean the annihilation of Israel? Yes, of course.
I cannot find diplomatic leeway in the Hamas position.
That's crazy. This is a disservice, in my opinion. 100%. It's a disservice. It's like, isn't this like mentioning the nuking of Gaza? But of course you don't bring that up as an official position. Yes. Except it's one instance versus from an older clip post October 7 against the exact opposite framework from, and the exact opposite sentiment from official channels that are claiming that, one, they want to go back to the 1967 charter territories, and two, that they want a cessation of hostilities. Okay? A ceasefire, a permanent ceasefire. That is what's on the table right now. That is the Hamas position, the official Hamas position. That goes directly against what he's saying. That is what has been ongoing for the past couple of months. Now, is that the same as nuking Gaza versus what Benjamin Netanyahu is saying? No, Benjamin Netanyahu is not saying we should nuke Gaza. He's saying we should use conventional weapons to basically achieve the same means without any kind of nuclear fallout. So in a way, his position is directly on the opposing end of the spectrum versus the let's nuke Gaza versus let's basically nuke Gaza by dumping a nuclear bomb amount of fucking conventional weapons is on the same side of the agenda.
Well, this is when we need the world, the civilized world of nations, to come together and stop this madness.
A resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza has just failed to pass.
A UN Security Council draft resolution to allow aid delivery has been vetoed.
Russia and China used their veto against an American resolution condemning Hamas.
An immediate ceasefire in Gaza has failed. Western nations voted against it.
It was delayed 4 times this week.
Draft resolution has not been adopted.
Why do you even have a f***ing building?
Yeah, I wonder what failed. What caused these resolutions to fail? I hope that he brings up that it is the United States vetoing, right?
Why? Why do you? We could use that. We have a housing crisis. Give us back our f***ing building.
Why don't you have him on your stream? Jon Stewart? I love him. I would love to have him on my stream. He's not going to fucking come on.
This is not right.
The only time you ever hear that the resolution failed is because of the United States is in the fucking title of the videos that he's showing, where it says U.S. vetoes UN resolution for
The
ceasefire.
United Nations even. What are you, just a support system for a diverse and pleasing food court? What are you? That cannot be the UN's food court, by the way. That is clearly just a mall in Long Island. Doesn't anyone care about the suffering of all these civilians? What about a good neighbor, Saudi Arabia?
The Palestinian cause is the Arab world's most important cause.
I want to see really a good life for the Palestinians.
Thank you, Saudi Arabia. Thank you. And while Saudi Arabia does not accept Palestinian refugees, and Egypt doesn't either, for that matter, the Saudis are the richest country in the region.
That's crazy. Come on, dog. That is insane. Really? Let's not interrogate why Palestinian refugees as a concept even exists. Like, that's wild. Okay? That's number one. Number two, Saudi Arabia is Israel's most powerful ally in the region. One of Israel's most powerful allies in the region. Like, the notion that, like, Israel is not accepting refugees, Saudi Arabia is not accepting refugees, like, I mean, that's like Zionist propaganda at that point. What the fuck is he saying? I hope he recovers from this.
And they've given, this can't be right, on average about $200 million a year to the Palestinians. Jesus, are you kidding me? The Saudis have given just as much money to Phil Mickelson. Is that true? I assume to promote the equally important cause of the Mickelsonian people. So Israel, the United States, the United Nations, the Arab nations, no one seems to be incentivized to stop the suffering of the innocent people in this region. Now, I didn't want to bring this up, but there is another player. small religious startup out of
This take basically is like almost in line with the deeply racist notion that all Arabs are the same and that none of the Arab nations, even though they are the same, want Palestinians because they're pesky. I've heard this a million times over from the most rabid ultra-nationalists, ultra-Zionists. I don't know why. I mean, Jon Stewart is not stating that, but it can very clearly be identified in that same vein, what he's saying here, especially if he doesn't clear up the confusion. I think this is a cowardly way to try to show support for Palestinians at a time when they are being genocided because you're terrified of the way that you will be perceived by mainstream media. To be fair, is it wrong to say some countries in the Middle East should be doing more? Sure, fair, but that's not what he's saying. He's only talking about Saudi Arabia only giving $200 million to the Palestinians. He's talking about how Palestinian refugees are not allowed inside of Egypt or Saudi Arabia. That, in and of itself, if you leave it like that, makes it seem like Palestinians are subjected to a natural crisis, as though they're victims of a typhoon or something. They're not. They are being genocided. You have to clearly state that. That's number one. Number two, he rarely mentions, or maybe he will eventually, but he didn't mention that those Arab states that he's talking about are puppet states of the U.S. regime, something that I know he knows. Like, Saudi Arabia's complicity in Israel's genocide is not that they're only giving $200 million to the Palestinians, or is not that they're opening their doors to Palestinian refugees. Their complicity in genocide is that they're a direct ally to Israel in the region and are working actively to undermine the only ally outside of Iran that the Palestinians have, Yemen. The Saudis were engaging in a genocide in Yemen not that long ago and have continued defending Israel militarily with American weapons as the Yemeni population has tried to apply economic pressure in the Red Sea. Saudi Arabia is a security cooperator in that area. That's ridiculous to just mention their sole responsibility upon the Palestinian population as like a lack of money that they're giving to the Palestinians. Not mentioning the major cause as to why there are Palestinian refugees to begin with, already really fucked up. It's ridiculous.
Out of Bethlehem. I think it might have began as a carpenters union, but has gotten big.
Turkish army train and support the Israeli army. Why don't you talk about that? Shut up. Turkey army train and support the Israeli army, and you don't talk about that? I do talk about that. I talk about that all the time. You dumb bitch. What the fuck are you talking about? The Turkish involvement with Israel being purely a matter of symbolic gestures and a matter of just pure theatrics is something that I routinely bring up. Why are you coming in here completely misinformed about my positions and having such anger and resentment? Baited too easily? What the fuck are you talking about, baited too easily? Ridiculous. The reason Egypt, Saudi, etc. will not allow refugees from Gaza is clear. You open the border, Israelis will never allow their return. This is a fact. Happened to the Palestinians who moved to Iraq and Syria in 1948. Yes. This is like the NPCs that come in here asking you about the Armenian genocide. I know. In the words of Asmongold, if my positions are so shitty, why do you feel the need to lie about them? If my takes are so bad, I've yet to see one singular person that is a naysayer come in here and actually bring up an actual take that I have. It's so strange.
Do they have a plan for the Middle East?
There will be the Battle of Armageddon. Jesus Christ is going to sweep over that battlefield and to annihilate that army of 200 million people. The blood will flow to the bridle of a horse.
So that's the plan for the Prince of Peace? Is that so? I am not an equestrian expert, but if the blood goes all the way to the bridle, that's an enormous amount of blood, no? Unless, are we talking about the mini horses? Because that's still, it's a lot of blood, but more manageable. And adorable. Look, I think we have to get real here. The status quo cycle of provocation and retribution is predicated on some idea that one of these groups is going to go away. And they are not. If we want a safe and free Israel and a safe and free Palestine, we have to recognize that reality. And I know.
Yeah, this is like the most quote unquote woke position you're going to get in like liberal mainstream media. And yet it still, in my opinion, does not meet the standard of what is currently happening on the ground. Okay? You will never recognize that this is actually a good take because it's not. You want to know why it's not actually a good take, what he's saying right here? Because Israel is currently conducting an ethnic cleansing campaign. And even before Israel was conducting an ethnic cleansing campaign that it's greatly increased the cruelty on, this time around, Israel is a violent apartheid ethno-state. Okay? The alternative is to wipe out Israelis or Gazans entirely from the region or endless war. No, that is not the alternative. There are many alternatives throughout history where apartheid regimes or settler colonial occupations have ended. Algeria, Ireland, the apartheid in South Africa. You are ahistorical. You do not have an understanding of history. There is no two-state solution because no such state exists. There is already one singular state. It is the Israeli apartheid state. That's it. That's what's going on right now. This framework must end, in my opinion. People always think that violence and war is just natural and humans always do this, and yet you're saying this in the Western world. Half the time, you're saying this from maybe even a European country. You cannot imagine a world where France and England would be going to war with one another, and yet if you look at the history of both nations, they almost always were at war with one another. World War II is not that long ago, on top of the conflict between France and England. Algerians are native, the French weren't. Neither Palestinians or Israelis view the others as natives. The only bad take you have is the one-state solution is incredibly utopian. No. It is not incredibly utopian at all. It is a moral framework that must exist, that we must move towards. Okay? But apartheid ended because white people left? No. That is not true at all. There are same number of white people, same population percentage of white people still fucking exist in South Africa. They went to get a top of the hour subscription. Oh, come on, dude. Guys, you are not going to ever be able to convince me. Here, I'm going to run the top of the hour ad break here. Okay, I got cooked here. Whatever. You are not going to be able to come in here and convince me to move away from a position that offers permanent security for everyone that lives in historic Palestine. Okay? There is no half measures when it comes to apartheid and genocide. You think that there is a half measure that we can arrive at with respect to literally a supremacist ethno-state apartheid. What do you mean? Oh, just a little bit of that is fine, is not going to work. That's ridiculous. Especially when I'm talking about not what is possible, but what must happen. Okay? How we get there is an entirely different conversation. One of the chatters, a dumb bitch one, is a Turk who's a mega Coomer sub donor to like 4 Balkan yoga streamers. Nice. I mean, it just really can't happen, though. They're far too different. No, they're not. No, they're not. The idea that, like, the Israelis and the Palestinian people are far too different from one another is laughable. You have taken and adopted the supremacist position hook, line, and sinker. This has happened historically. You live in probably the United States of America. Do you think that this is not what people were saying in the eve of the abolition of slavery? What the fuck? Sorry. Blacks and whites are too different from one another. We can never have peace. We should maintain separate but equal status. You think that wasn't the leading influencing factor in maintaining segregation? Wait, why are chatters toting Zionist talking points as Americans living in a multicultural country? They're touting Zionist talking points because that's all they have heard. They have no capacity to view the world outside of the conditions that were set before them. And even in the world that they exist in, they can't recognize that the very same principles that they are lauding, that they are presenting, have already been destroyed. You just have to look at history to understand that we have overcome these situations. Ofer Kasif supports 2 states and democratization of Israel. I like that one chatter said Ofer Kasif supports 2 states and the democratization of Israel. And the other chatter said Ofer Kasif on Majority Report today basically said 2 states, but also end the apartheid and maybe 1 state in the future through democratic means. Hassan doesn't even know what his name means. What? The 2-state solution is not a real one. People will inevitably wake up to that reality. It is the position that was touted for my entire upbringing. And it is how we arrived at the current iteration of the genocidal conflict and the apartheid maintenance that we're at right now. Oh yeah, we're going to do a 2-state. We're going to do a 2-state. We want a 2-state. We want a 2-state. all the while, throughout that process, Israel has deliberately occupied 70% of the West Bank. I used to be an advocate for a two-state solution myself. Avi Shleim, famed Israeli historian, also was an advocate for a two-state solution himself. Don't listen to my words. Listen to the words of someone who, one, lives it, and also, two, is infinitely more educated on the matter than my dumb himbo ass. Let's take a look. How Avi Shleim moved from two-state solution to seek to a one-state solution. Chadalia has posted an excellent interview with the British-Israeli historian Avi Shleim, in which Shleim states that he is an Arab Jew because he was born in Iraq, and describes the long history of Jewish-Muslim coexistence in the Arab world before the rise of Zionism in the 20th century, something that I talk about quite frequently as well. Palestinians, Shleim says, were not the only victims of Zionism. There were other victims of Zionism, the Jews of the Arab lands. There was a Jewish community in Iraq, which had been there for 2.5 millennia and had no wish to leave. It is only because of the rise of nationalism in the 20th century that the peaceful coexistence was no longer possible. Shleim has no faith in Donald Trump's ability to resolve the conflict. The American-sponsored peace process, which began in 1991 after the Gulf War, is all process and no peace. It is a charade. It is pretense. It is worse than a charade because the peace process gives Israel the cover it needs to pursue its aggressive colonial project on the West Bank. Shleim was once proud of his Israeli background, which included serving in the Israeli armed forces in the 1960s. He used to be for partition as realistic, but today he has given up on the two-state solution because he observed Israel's steadfast refusal to allow a Palestinian state. I was a proponent of a two-state solution for most of my life because there can never be absolute justice for the Palestinians. I believe that the creation of the state of Israel involved a monumental injustice to the Palestinians, but I don't want to go a step further and say Israel should be dismantled in order to deliver justice to the Palestinians. I accept the reality of Israel within its original borders. I accept the legitimacy within its original pre-1967 borders. Come on, dude, a two-state solution is what the Palestinians want. One-state solution is just a Weasley way to say fuck Palestinians. Just let the Israeli government completely assimilate all the land. What? Edward Said described the two communities as two communities of suffering. I'm going to move away from what a random chatter is saying and instead talk about a very important Israeli scholar historian. But it is pretty funny to be like, I'm actually anti-Palestinian and pro-Israel. That's pretty funny. You're right. You caught me. Edward Said described the two communities as two communities of suffering. We have to take into account the tragic history of the Jews as well as the suffering of the Palestinians. The two-state solution seemed to be not a perfect solution, but a reasonable solution. The PLO, by signing the Oslo Accords, gave up on the claims to 78% of mandatory Palestine in the hope that they would get an independent Palestinian state on the remaining 22% on the West Bank and Gaza. So I supported the two-state solution, but Israel, under both Labor and Likud governments, continued to expand settlements. This is incompatible with a two-state solution. There is a pro-Israeli argument for a one-state solution as well as a pro-Palestinian one. The obvious pro-Palestinian one is that they no longer are permanently occupied by an apartheid regime that is destroying their lives and livelihoods and also ritualistically humiliating them, right? Duh. But the pro-Israeli argument in that circumstance is that there is permanent security for Israel. And not only that, but also that a two-state solution would require the dissolution and destruction of settlements in the West Bank, which have been deliberately designed to cut through the formerly contiguous Palestinian lands that it's supposed to be, and it would require the forcible expulsion of 750,000 Jews living in occupied territory. They are currently illegally occupying 70% of the West Bank. This would be unimaginable cruelty brought upon to babies, children, not just Israelis, not Jews. No, I'm specifically talking about Jewish settlers in Palestinian land. This does not have anything to do with, when I talk about Israel and I talk about Jewish people living in occupied Palestine, I'm specifically utilizing the Israeli demographic term for it. The settlements represent land grabbing and peacemaking don't go together. It is one or the other. By its actions, it's not always. In its rhetoric, Israel's opted for land grabbing as we speak. Israel's expanding settlements. So Israel's been systematically destroying the basis for a viable Palestinian state, and this is the declared objective of the Likud and Netanyahu, who used to pretend to accept a two-state solution. In the lead up to the last election, he said there will be no Palestinian state on his watch. The expansion of settlements on the wall meant that there cannot be a viable Palestinian state with territorial contiguity. The most that the Palestinians can hope for is Bantustans, a series of enclaves surrounded by Israeli settlements and Israeli military bases, which is what they have currently. So a two-state solution is no longer a viable option, and that is why I have become a supporter of the one-state solution, a single state with equal rights for all of its citizens. Ideologically, I don't have any problem with a one-state solution. Ideologically, it is very attractive. It is a noble vision of two communities living in harmony in one space with equal rights for all of its members. But I am not naive enough to think that the one-state solution is a realistic prospect, because there is no support for a one-state solution in Israel. And if pushed really hard, I think Israel would withdraw to the wall on the West Bank and annex whatever bits it wants of the West Bank. It would annex the main settlement blocks in Ma'ale Adumim and the whole area around Jerusalem. And it would do so unilaterally rather than have a one state. So I am not in the least bit optimistic that the one state solution is a viable proposition. But this is where I stand, and I blame Israel for eliminating the alternative of a two-state solution. This is exactly the same opinion that I have on the viability of a two-state solution. This article presupposes that there can be no evacuation of Israeli settlements. That's a non-starter for nearly everyone in the West Bank. Yes. That, in my opinion, is infinitely more unrealistic. A full-blown expulsion of the 750,000 settlers living in occupied Palestinian territories is infinitely less realistic than a potential pathway towards a singular, solitary state that is democratic for all. Just so you understand.
That there is a twisted and much
You are too humane, but if their arms twisted enough through conflict or more viably politics, Israel will evacuate all settlers just like they did in Gaza before? No, they will not. The mass evacuation in Gaza was already problematic politically for Israel, for the Israeli administrations that oversaw that expulsion, and that number was 5,000. There were 5,000 settlers in Gaza. 5,000. Not 750,000. 5,000. And they were immediately resettled in the West Bank, by the way. Come on.
Tested history in the region that has brought us to this point. But we are at this point. And anything we do from here has to look forward. So tonight, lucky you, I'm going to do that with not one, not two, but a three. Solutions for peace. Number one.
Along the shores of Pleasant Lake in Maine, 95 Israeli and Palestinian teens are trading rockets for rackets. The goal of Seeds of Peace is to open these young minds.
The French colonies all left Algiers and they were bigger than Israeli settlers. Yeah, that's a wonderful prospect, except the difference there, however, is that the Israeli settlers believe that they are native to the land in a way that the French settlers do not. French settlers have a way to have, they can just hop across the pond and fuck back off to France. A lot of people that live in Israel, a lot of the Israeli citizens, not the Palestinian citizens of Israel, I'm specifically talking about the Israeli government's own demographic consideration, Israeli Jews, they've been born in Israel, they've lived in Israel, that's all they know. Many Pied Noirs actually did consider themselves indigenous to Algerian land. It ultimately does not change that dynamic. There is still another place they can go to. This is where the Holocaust does come into play in the formation of the Israeli state. If you cannot understand this, you cannot understand how to resolve this endless hostility, this endless maintenance of an apartheid regime. People like the meme about Long Island and New York and Brooklyn and yada, yada, yada. Yes, there are almost 100,000 American passport holders in the West Bank. Okay? And by the way, a one state would genuinely have people voluntarily leaving the area that they currently occupy because they don't want to live next to Palestinians with equal rights. This would be a genuinely tumultuous process. I'm not saying that it would not be. Of course it would. Especially with so much fascist propaganda. There were many racist white people that left apartheid South Africa after the apartheid ended. Do you know where they went? To Israel. So, you know, there will always be people who are like, nah, dog, fuck this shit. If I can't be like outwardly racist and live in an outwardly racist, white supremacist state, then I don't want to be here.
Okay, that one hasn't been scaled up yet. And may take longer than we have. Unless we just bring the whole region to Maine. How fast can we make 14 million rackets? But that's just my opening offer. That was just one peace plan, people. Don't abandon me yet. Number two. Let's just ask God. It's his house. He's the one who started all this. Just ask God. He can tell us who is right. Is it the Jews? Is it the Muslims? Is it the Zoroastrians? If it's the Scientologists, a lot of us are going to have egg on our faces. But given God's lack of communication over this past, let's say, millennia, All right. Here's another one. And heaven forbid, I actually think this last one could work. Starting now, no preconditions, no earned trust, no partners for peace. Israel stops bombing. Hamas releases the hostages. The Arab countries who claim Palestine as their top priority come in and form a demilitarized zone between Israel and a free Palestinian state. The Saudis, Egypt, UAE, Qatar, Jordan, they all form like a NATO arrangement guaranteeing security for both sides. Obviously, they won't call it NATO. It's the Middle East Treaty Organization. It's Me Too. Let's tweet it out. Me Too. Tonight, people, let's get this region Me Too'd. Now, obviously, I have not worked out the exact verbiage, but anything is better than the cluster cycle we have now, because honestly, what is the alternative?
The trump of God sounds and
Two-staters will call ending the apartheid regime for a one-state utopian, then say some bullshit like Jon Stewart said? Yeah.
the rapture happens. We're gone. In the twinkling of an eye, we're just simply not here.
Poof indeed, sir. Poof indeed.
From what I understand, it gets much worse when Murtaza Hussein and Yair Rosenberg duke it out on Israel-Palestine past the peace. I mean, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. But you know, I mean, this is the most you're going to get. Jon Stewart, unaware, he just reiterated Hamas's position on hostages for a ceasefire, Lamau. Yeah, I mean, he did. That's why I'm saying it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. But let's see.
Writer at The Intercept, Murtaza Hussein, and staff writer at The Atlantic, Yair Rosenberg. Please welcome to the show. I told you guys it was going to get... Welcome. The audience, very rarely do you...
What's so bad about wanting two states who live peacefully next to each other? The unlikelihood of how that will be achieved. Like, dude, you're talking to someone who already was at this position, okay? Like 10 fucking years ago, 20 years ago. The fuck do you mean? I'm Turkish. I grew up in a Muslim country. Okay? This is one of the issues that every fucking Muslim learns about from the jump, okay, and thinks about even when they're like 12, okay? Rich Turk. Oh my God, I know. Yes, exactly. Turkey isn't a Muslim country. Yes, it's only 90 fucking 5% Muslim. I already described it. I already explained it to you. The two-state solution is what is currently happening and what is currently presented. Okay? And was presented for years and years and years. That's how we arrived at this position. Oh, fuck. It's like chipping away one of the tattoos.
You get a standing ovation for the guests, but clearly they think Muslim and Jew sitting next to each other? How can that be? But thank you both for being here. You are both, obviously, you're American writers that write a lot about the Middle East. The peace plan, the Stewart plan,
how can it be?
The Me Too plan. And
I'm going to pee. I'll be back.
How unrealistic is that? It's similar to a 2002 Arab League resolution. Why? Why can't this happen?
Well, you know, it's not a bad idea. And on paper...
We're going to cut there. Thank you so much, Murtaza. So appreciate that.
Well, you know, I think the problem is, I write about U.S. foreign policy, especially in the Middle East, and I feel that the consistent theme here is that when we give blank checks to countries which are clients or partners, we enable their worst tendencies or their worst behaviors. In this case, you know, you mentioned the Arab peace plan. In 2002, the Arab League offered Israel full political, economic, diplomatic normalization in exchange for the main crux of it is creating a Palestinian state in the 1967 borders, which is in line with international law and so forth.
Right.
They've reiterated,
and a repatriation plan, which
can be negotiated, the details of it, but that was the crux of it. And, you know, they've reiterated this plan many, many times, including recently. And it's not just the Arab world, the broader Muslim world as well, too. I interviewed the Pakistani ambassador to the UN a few weeks ago. He told me that Pakistan, Indonesia, other large population Muslim countries would be willing to normalize with Israel, but they do not want the Palestinians to be thrown under the bus. There needs to be a two-state solution, in their view, creating a state in those lines. Without that, they cannot be. But the Israeli government has never responded to this deal. It's not even rejected it. It's refused to engage. And I think the main reason is because they have the U.S. as a guarantor. Whatever they do, they'll have a superpower backing. And many people in Israel want the West Bank. And the Israeli government, Benjamin Netanyahu, has bragged that he's stopped the Palestinian state from coming into existence. And because they have this backing, they don't need to compromise with their neighbors or engage with their neighbors substantively.
Do you think the U.S. backing of that enables this reticence?
I think the U.S. putting itself in this position, not just this position, many other situations where it acts as a blank check writer for its clients, it enables these situations.
Well, we got to make money somehow. And without selling weapons, what are we going to fall back on? Wheat? Come on. Yeah, you probably have a slightly different interpretation of that peace plan and also what we laid out here. So,
yeah. Well, I think that, again, the idea is actually a pretty good one, which is the idea to put some third party in between these two parties.
That's what seems like has to.
That would then be sort of like the, you know, the referee. The problem is...
This should be alarming for Jon Stewart, that he is immediately willing and able to recognize his position as a good one. I wonder if that will cause him to... I don't know, reinterrogate his position.
Is that, while as you showed in your monologue, the Arab states are willing to talk a big game. The United States, and sometimes, depending on the administration, will also talk a big game. But no one actually wants to put their own troops down there. Can you imagine America under Democrat?
Interesting that Yair Rosenberg is utilizing what Jon Stewart brought up in his monologue. Very interesting. Like, oh, Arab nations are willing to talk a big game. It's because what he's saying lends itself so perfectly to ultra-Zionist talking points. That's why I was frustrated with that aspect of the monologue.
Democratic presidents who are retrenching from the Middle East, right, trying to get out of the forever wars, or Donald Trump, who wants to turn America into some sort of isolationist country, get us out of, you know, stops helping Ukraine, right? They're not going to stick Americans there, right? The Arab countries, no different. They'll, you know, give a token amount of money and then try to, like, you know, make it go away. And so that's, I think, the fundamental flaw here. I will say that if you took away U.S. backing and said, Israelis, we're going to put some other people on your border, particularly, say, Arab states, and they're going to be the guarantors of your security, the Israelis wouldn't say, well, I guess we don't have the Americans, we're just going to pack it up.
Right.
Because this is a country...
Nobody's going anywhere.
Yeah, and also this is a country that's full of people, right, who fled other countries, including those Arab countries, because they were persecuted, right, killed, dispossessed, right? There's like, you know, half of Israelis are now Middle Eastern origin.
But
I like that all of this conversation still revolves around the hidden premise that Israel could stop being an apartheid regime, Israel could stop doing genocide, and yet that's never discussed up until this moment. That's real weird. That is really fucking weird Yair also mentions that a lot of the Israelis fled Arab nations, and yet in Israel, they are not considered Arab. Arabs are Palestinian citizens of Israel and not Jewish. The only people that are considered Arab, once again, and I repeat this, in Israel are those who are not Jewish. There are plenty of Arab Jews that live in Israel and have Israeli citizenship. They are not considered Arabs. They are considered Jews in the eyes of the Israeli government, of course. So that's another interesting thing to just maybe scratch the surface on. I don't know. How did that happen? What does this mean? Why is there such a designation?
Two diasporas don't make a right.
Of course not.
It's, you know,
but they won't trust it.
But let me push back on both of these for just 1 second. So, and this just pushes back on both. You know, we get into this litigation of, well, the Palestinians and the Arab state, they propose something very reasonable to the Israelis, but the Israelis wouldn't do it. And the Israelis say, well, we don't have a partner for peace, and we propose something very reasonable, but they didn't do it. Doesn't it?
Really? Did they have the Israelis ever proposed something reasonable? Because I've never seen a reasonable Israeli proposal. I have not. I know the history. I have never seen a reasonable Israeli proposal. Not once. That, I think, is a claim that also should be interrogated.
It appears that no party is incentivized to fix this at the peril and detriment to the Palestinian people. And here's what I mean by that. Egypt has its border closed to the Palestinians. These are autocratic states in the Arab world. They all view the creation of Israel.
Okay, Egypt doesn't jump without America's say-so, okay? Egypt is only a country as a consequence of U.S. funding as it stands currently. It's ridiculous that, like, he is presenting this as though Egypt has any autonomy in the process. This is an American puppet state. This is not an Arab versus Jew conflict. If you make it seem as though it is, you all of a sudden are lending your platform to ultra-Zionists who also make it seem like it's an Arab versus Jew conflict. This is the position, this is the official position of the Israeli state. Its demographic concerns, the Israeli ethnostate's demographic concerns, hinges on the rest of the world seeing it as an Arab versus Jewish person conflict. Once again, we are talking about people as though they are monolithic in nature. They are not. I don't like making it seem as though there aren't millions, a plurality, as a matter of fact, of Arab Jews living in Israel, and that they are somehow a different population. They are a different population in the eyes of the ethno-state, but they are not different at all.
As a humiliation. If that's where they start from, it's a very easy kind of issue to deflect attention from your own dictatorships, to own the so-called Arab street with anger towards Israel. But the Saudis, they all.
So you're saying the only reason Egypt doesn't open its borders is because of America, or that if America said open it, then they would? There's two reasons as to why Egypt isn't opening its borders. Well, three. Reason number one, the United States of America. Reason number two, Israel. But reason number three is the most important reason, at least if you consider the Palestinian position on this matter, which is that opening Egypt's borders to the Palestinian refugees all of a sudden makes it seem like they are escaping a natural disaster. They are not escaping a natural disaster, and they need to evacuate as a consequence of that. They are being forcibly ethnically displaced from their ancestral homelands, We are talking about ethnic displacement. This is a completion of Israel's genocidal ideology. It is ridiculous.
They all do business together. Aren't they disincentivized to fix this? Netanyahu, whenever he gets in political trouble, suddenly there's a war. So who is incentivized to actually fix this? And isn't the people who really suffer from all of it just the Palestinians, who get no regard from any group, no real support?
You know, I think that was the case for some time, but I think that things have changed in the sense that the Arab countries are very eager to get this off their plate, actually. That's why they had this Arab Peace Initiative and keep reiterating it, because they no longer want to have a conflict with Israel. It's not in their interest. They'd like to move past it, but they cannot do so in a way which ignores the Palestinians. And I think that the idea of the Abraham Accords, for instance, was let's just sidestep this issue and make deals with the Emiratis and Saudis and so forth. I was in Saudi Arabia recently, and I was talking to a broad range of people. I think the idea that the Saudis will make a deal with Israel without a two-state solution or meaningful pathway to one or significant concessions on that subject is very unrealistic because...
No, that's my point,
yes.
is the two-state solution. But if nobody is there to just guarantee, everybody has preconditions for everything. You know, Netanyahu, I need a partner. If you don't meet these certain conditions of no violence, I won't negotiate with you. Well, America occupied Iraq, and there was violence there the entire time. I mean, imagine if we had set a precondition that there'd be no Iraqi government unless, you know, this violence would end. Nothing would ever. It seems like nobody's actually being honest or genuine in the region about their aims.
I would put it a little differently, which is to say that the people who are running the show...
You're a scholar and I'm a comedian.
We'll see when it's done. The people who are running the show for some time...
Dude, come on, dude. Don't glaze this man up like this. That's crazy.
Which is how we arrive at this disastrous destination, are these absolutist actors who they might say that we'll negotiate and here's a condition and here's, you know, whatever. They might say that to some people, but in practice we see from...
What do you think about Yair Rosenberg's coverage? Brother, he writes for The Atlantic, which is literally a dish rag created by a motherfucking torturer in Israeli prisons. What the fuck are we talking about? Like, hello? Yeah. Oh, technically not created, sorry, but run by.
You know, many years of Netanyahu governance, every single document and statement, as you showed, of, you know, people from Hamas, right? These are people who want everything, right? They see half of the people in the land as the problem, right? And then the question is how you negotiate.
The absolutists.
Yeah, the absolutists.
Okay.
And then there are lots of people who are also pragmatists. And that's how we had a peace process that failed. But there were genuine majorities in the polls at the time among Israelis and Palestinians behind negotiations for two states. And so there always are those people. They might be a minority, they might be a majority at a given point in time. During a war right now, they're a minority, right? But there's always those people who say this is not going to be solved with weapons. We need to find a way to live together. But we're not supporting those people.
How could it ever be solved if...
The issue with Jon Stewart and any liberal commentator is if they can't say the word genocide, then they will always make it a both sides case and wash their hands of any guilt. Yes. This is the problem. Two words need to be mentioned when the Israeli issue is being talked about. Okay? The conflict between Israel and Palestine. One word is apartheid, and the second word is genocide. Okay? If you can't say these two words, then your starting point is just completely wrong. One side is clearly in the wrong. The other side is clearly victims of said wrong. It's very odd to have this conversation as though these are equal partners. One side is the occupied, the other side is the occupier. Now, throughout history, we've had similar dynamics play itself out. At the time, certainly people talked about the issue with similar whitewashed terminology about how impossible it is to change this. Oh, it's just a conflict. The abolition of slavery comes to mind. But that doesn't change the moral wrong. And we now at least live in a world, in a post-abolition world, and there's still a ginormous amount of issues there as well in the United States of America. But the idea that people will both side slavery is just unheard of at this point. Only the most rugged white nationalist Klansmen will say such things.
If the United States and Israel, the two, let's face it, most hated entities in that part of the world, are the ones responsible for the peacekeeping effort, it doesn't make any sense. If the Arabs don't step in, if the Arab nations there, and couldn't you say that this was a great bulwark against the strength of Iran? Couldn't you convince UAE and Saudis that the only way to temper Tehran is by forming this alliance and recognizing them?
Well, you know, it's interesting. You mentioned that the U.S. stance in the region is very unpopular. I think it's related to this issue. This is the core issue of why the U.S. has not had normal relations with the Arab world and Muslim world generally. It's a very bitter and symbolic issue for a lot of people.
We do have normal relations. Well, we sell more weapons to the Saudis than we do to the Israelis.
On a public level, or like, you know, only with dictators, for instance. The reason this democracy is very skeptical in the Arab world, we're afraid that regimes which are mad at us will come to power. But I think the main issue, I think from a U.S. perspective primarily, is that we're involved in this very bitter conflict. We're not taking it seriously in solving it. We take a very one-sided approach, I think. And we do that supposedly in Israel's interest, but I think what it does in reality is prolong the conflict indefinitely to everyone's detriment. I'd come to the position that we should either be fair in this conflict and adjudicate it in a way which is fair and results in a just solution both sides accept, or we should leave. We should leave because it's impacting us in very, very negative ways. Militarily, economically, strategically. We have other problems in the world to deal with as well, too. And I believe that if the U.S. were to pull what I'd say is a blank check from Israel, it would incentivize Israel to compromise more. Because ultimately, Israel has to live in the Middle East. That's where the country is. That's where the people are going to be. There are neighbors who are willing to compromise with us.
We could move them to Maine. Maine is wide open. Right. They could play tennis.
Right.
But I hear your point. But to that, I do think that the idea that this is all about the United States, that we are the actor that drives all that, I think plays into a myth of United States control. And I think if we've learned anything in these last 20 to 30 years of the United States is we've got big influence, but we sure as hell don't have control. And
that's fucking bullshit, man. That's bullshit. That is bullshit. I don't know why he just like completely sidestepped Mortaza's position, which I think is like infinitely more reserved than mine on this matter, where he says that even if America were to stop offering a blank check to Israel, Israel would be more willing to compromise, which I think the position there that he's making is that like it is America's military might and political security and also the vast array of weapons allowed to be sold to Israel that causes Israel to behave in the way that it is, which is true. Okay. And John did not even address that point and immediately moved on to make it seem like it's a myth. Like he neutralized Mortaza's position without even really addressing it. I don't fully understand what the fuck he's saying here.
And of United States control. And I think if we've learned anything in these last 20 to 30 years of the United States is we've got big influence, but we sure as hell don't have control. And I'm not so sure that by the U.S. changing its policy in certain ways, that solves this. What's your...
Ugh. Dude, I don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't know if Jon Stewart was always like a bit of a liberal Zionist or what the fuck's going on here, but like, I'm trying not to be overly critical of his take here. Right? I don't know. So many goats being washed today. Sorry, I keep putting this in the chat. I just need advice. I'm lost, desperate. What do you mean? Take his dog shit, man. No other way to put it. I mean, I do find it to be a little lost in the sauce.
What's your thought on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, John, that's a very controversial.
If our policy doesn't matter, can't we agree to just stop the policy on funding them? I mean, that is one way to approach it. Yeah. That's why I think everyone that says America's involvement in Israel is insignificant or inconsequential is lying. I don't think they see that. Yup, Amber, he is right. You cringe America bad losers need to grow up, Lamau. Not true. Hassan, you need some wiki education, Lamau. The Twitter headlines aren't doing you much justice. Would you like to come on the stream, chatter, and educate all of us? Because you just said I need wiki education. I can't tell if you're doing a bit or if you're being for real right now. But I think that it would be wonderful to enlighten people with your phenomenal perspective. Considering that I just simply get my talking points from Twitter headlines, I would prefer you speak to your daddy D-man. I think he's your daddy. So you're afraid is what you're saying. You're just repeating talking points that you've heard from multiple divorce champion and also completely oblivious genocide defender, former Twitch streamer, Destiny. And saying incredibly cringe things like wiki education. Go ahead. You can come in and repeat his talking points if you would like. Are you afraid? You cringe America bad losers. The D in the D, man, stands for divorce. Come on, dude. I'm sure you seem scared of speaking to him. You're the one who seems scared. I'm terrified. Terrified. You're the one who's currently refusing to come and educate people. I am such a stupid guy. Simply relying on Twitter headlines, as you said, do not have the wonders of a wiki education. Come and elaborate on your positions. Why are you running away from boldly and bravely defending your positions in the marketplace of ideas? You all right? This is how you wish to spend your moment in the spotlight? It's pretty lame. I don't think these people realize that Twitter headlines are credible journalists that you know personally. Yes, they don't realize that. Or even if they do, they don't really care. Go ahead. I offered you a guest star. I offered you an opportunity to explain your positions, and it seems like you're deflecting away from that opportunity. This is a phenomenal opportunity for you to literally educate so many chatters. It says a lot that this guy made an account on Valentine's Day. I said, speak to D-Man. Why are you picking on me, Lamau? Why am I picking on you? I don't know who you are. I will forget that you ever existed as soon as I close this window. You are the one who came in here and said that not only me, but my entire community is cringe and that our only perspective on the matter is that America is bad. You didn't offer us the why America is good or why we say America is bad, especially as it pertains to Israel, Palestine. You then made an assertion that I need wiki education, as in read Wikipedia pages to educate myself on the matter. You then also falsely claimed that I only get my information from Twitter headlines, not realizing that the Twitter headlines you're talking about are actually journalists that I personally know that are breaking stories that they are writing about. Same journalists that I also routinely have on the broadcast to interview. And then claim that I'm creating an echo chamber and reinforcing it. I gave you the opportunity to destroy that echo chamber by coming in here. If your ideas are better than mine, if you are actually correct, if you're on the side of justice in this circumstance, you should be able to absolutely eviscerate me in the marketplace of ideas. And yet, as soon as I brought that up, as soon as I gave you that wonderful opportunity to educate 23,495 people, you immediately turned around and said, I can't do it myself. I'm scared. You should go and talk to the guy I'm here fighting on the behalf of. Of course, you know, showing why this has been a scourge in this community for the past 4 to 5 years. I'm just a debate pedophile. I'm not worth your time, King. God, you're such an insecure loser. Yup, keep rambling. True. Brother. I think we can all see who the real fucking loser is here. And maybe you can probably see it too. Just think about it a little bit further. It's definitely, probably the guy who just called himself a pedophile. Let's move on.
Thing to say that the United States is not the main character of the entire planet.
Then I'm going to say you said it, and I didn't say it. That was him.
Okay. Because, this is not live, so maybe we'll cut that.
Yes, exactly.
But that is clearly the case. There is this sort of sense that a lot of people have that the United States and the president of the United States in particular have the ability to sort of wave a magic wand and solve these things. If they could, there are multiple American presidents who would have done so. And they would have changed the policies, and they would have tried, and there were always people in different factions in the State Department, and they tried different things. You go back to Eisenhower and Nixon, they all had plans, right? And they pressured Israel in ways that, presidents today don't. Right? But there's a reason why we moved in different directions, because they thought maybe if we are, more, involved. And one thing I want to say to this, though, is that a lot of people want to see a solution in the Middle East, but they also want to see the U.S. get out of the Middle East. And those two things are in contradiction. And people are ultimately going to have to make choices about what the U.S. does and doesn't do. But I don't necessarily have the answer to that.
And not be so involved in the region. I do think, if there is, to your point, if the Arab states form a more broader alliance with Israel in a genuine way, and that the United States wouldn't feel maybe that it had to be on the line there. Listen, I'm no fan of any of it. I think this cycle of violence over the 75 years is destroying the dreams of two peoples. Not just the Palestinians. I think it's destroying the dream of the Israeli people as well. And so
I don't know about that. I don't know about that at all. I don't know if there's any appetite on that front. Something that he also kind of acknowledges as well. Something everyone acknowledges whenever they talk about like the inability for a one-state solution or the inability to stop Israel is the recognition that even if America pulls out, Israel's not going to stop. And it's like, okay, well, then their dreams are probably currently materializing in front of their eyes, and they're loving it. So we, as an outside third party, if we are an outside third party, which I don't believe, I think America is the funder and facilitator and the director of this genocide. But if we are an outside third party, then we should probably pull out and also treat Israel as a hostile entity. I think this comes with the recognition that no matter what happens, like there is genuinely a lot of support for this ethnic cleansing campaign.
I think that what we're doing now clearly and what we've been doing is a cycle that we have to pull out of. And I imagine, you know, that's the thing that ultimately has to happen. So thank you both for coming by. Murtaza Hussain and Yair Rosenberg. We're going to take a quick break. I want to come back and talk to them about one other thing. We'll put that offline. We'll be right back after this. We're back. We're talking to Murtaza Hussain and Yair Rosenberg, and we talked a little bit about some of the things that could help break the cycle of violence in the Middle East. You know, the act of the two of you sitting here having this conversation is almost rebellious or revolutionary in the current moment.
Yeah, literally no one has ever brought forward someone of a Muslim background. I think Murtaza is Pakistani, not Palestinian, mind you, who is like in defense of Palestine, and another dude who's in defense of Israel of Jewish background. This has never happened before. It is truly revolutionary. Thank you, Jon Stewart.
How do you counsel Americans in this moment to be able to, you know, not lose so many Facebook friends when it comes to all this? Is there any advice that you guys have?
I'll take that first.
Well, the backstory of the two of us is that we've been having these conversations for something like 10 years. And the further backstory is that we reached out to each other on Twitter because we both realized that we shared a lot in common about how we approached the world, but we had very different opinions on issues like these. And that's how we became friends some 10 years ago, is it?
That's like that, yeah.
And so we've been doing this over, you know, in kosher restaurants, because for Sunni Muslims, many of them, kosher meat is halal. And so I will take Murtaza to a kosher restaurant, introduce him to it, and then we'll have conversations like these. And John is just, you know, interloping, you know, just sort of, you know, we decided to let him come.
The check.
Exactly, there we go. And what it is we refuse to allow ourselves or our communities to be held hostage to a ruinous conflict thousands of miles away that we may never be able to fully resolve or fix. Right. But we can have an impact about how we treat each other here. And the other thing, you know, I would say is that we are both journalists, and one of the things that motivates us is our pursuit of truth and what is true. And we share that even when we disagree. It's because we came to different conceptions and we really believe the other is honest.
Yeah, it's well said. Well, you know, ultimately, as Yair mentioned, we're journalists, and you know, we seek out people's perspectives who are different from you, who see from a different world, see the world from a different view, and then that's how you learn about the world a little bit. And I think I have to say that it's easier for us too, though, because we're not Israeli and not Palestinian. Ultimately, we're American, and we view it that way. You know, both of us know people whose family members have been killed recently, many dozens in some cases in Gaza recently, and you know that emotional component, you can compartmentalize it when you're not.
I don't care about their friendship.
So
anyway,
directly
let's see.
involved.
Come on, Murtaza.
Look at to an American perspective, two different sides of this issue.
Use the fucking opportunity you have in front of a massive podium to just like deliver some decent commentary on the matter. Holy shit.
In some sense, but we're able to have that conversation, which is constructive. What I would say, you know, I could accept any Palestinian's view or any Israeli's view when they're.
You like to send the hate trains to your friends a lot, don't you? Poor Ethan and Ludwig getting brigaded by your insane cult members, says Late Night Mike. Very interesting that this person came here to say such a thing. I'm friends with Ludwig and Ethan. Very odd. I suspect. I assume that you're. That's a new thing their daddy said on stream. Ugh. Very, very weird. Very weird case of projection happening here. Very odd.
They're so intimately involved in it, but I can never respect a bloodthirsty American. That's the only person I cannot respect. So, you know, that's kind of
and it is, you know, I have said this for many years. One of the biggest issues I have with American foreign policy is how cavalier it is about the destruction that so many of our policies have had internationally. Even something as simple as, you know, we had a big issue here with burn pits with Iraqi war veterans and Afghan war veterans. And we talked a lot about getting them the help they need here. But the thing nobody ever talked about was what those did to the environment in Iraq and Afghanistan. We left, and I think our policies oftentimes are cavalier to the destruction that occurs.
A report from Iraq, and I met so many people whose family members were killed by the U.S. military or by the violence that took place in that time. Also, very elevated rates of cancer and other indirect causes of the war.
Sure.
And it's kind of forgotten, actually. Those people, their lives go on, but the impact that we had in a very cavalier moment, to us, the news cycle moves on. So, but those memories stay, and it impacts our ability to operate there or how we're viewed there in the future. So, it's something which it's made me very pessimistic about U.S. foreign policy in the sense that I know many at the end of the Cold War there was an optimistic view we can make the world a better place. I think that's true in some cases, but I'm a lot more hesitant to get the U.S. deeply involved because there's a very negative track record.
I think there's a mythology around sort of the Marshall Plan. And it's the, after World War II, we say, oh, well, we were in war with Germany and Japan and we threw a bunch of...
What do you think about using the slur pig dog against a group of people? Why is this okay, but not other slurs? Like a capitalist pig dog? Is that what you mean? What is it like? Is pig dog is a slur? What? Is that not a joke from Red Alert? Yeah, I don't know what the fuck this. I don't know what's happening in the chat. What about man, bear, pig? What about that slur, huh? Yeah.